We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Dalet Amud Aleph in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 54a. The Gemara here continues with a statement of Rav. Rav says, Chazarnu al kol tzedodim shel Rabbi Meir. We reviewed all the angles of Rabbi Meir's opinion. V'lo matzinu hektish b'shogeg ein mischal b'mezid mischal. We don't find anywhere that Rabbi Meir makes this distinction that when it comes to hektish, if you use the hektish by mistake, so then it's not mischal, it doesn't become chulin, and if you use it b'mezid, so then it does become chulin. We don't find that. And Rashi explains, Chazarnu al kol tzedodim shel Rabbi Meir. We reviewed all the angles of Rabbi Meir's opinion. Kilomar, what it means to say is as follows. Even though we learned in the Mishnah according to Rabbi Meir, B'shogeg lo kiddush, that if a person uses money of hektish for the purposes of kiddushin, it's not a good kiddushin. Lav mishum desvir le hektish b'shogeg ein mischalel. It's not because Rabbi Meir holds that if a person uses hektish by mistake that it's not mischalel. That's not true. It actually is mischalel. It's considered to be me'ilah, and it is mischalel. It goes l'chulin. Shechazarnu b'chol mokom sheshana Rabbi Meir b'hilchas hektish. We've reviewed all the times where Rabbi Meir has teachings when it comes to hilchas hektish. V'lo matzinu mokom shamar bo hektish mischalel b'mezid ve'in mischalel b'shogeg. We don't find that he makes a distinction and says that it's mischalel if you use it on purpose, and it's not mischalel if you use it b'shogeg. Ela bein shogeg bein b'mezid mischalel. It's always mischalel whether you use the money of hektish by mistake, whether you use it on purpose. It's always mischalel according to Rabbi Meir. And so then the question is going to be, of course, why is it that in our Mishnah that it's not going to be a good kiddushin? And in any case, the point over here is that we don't hold of the reasons offered by Rabbi Yochanan on the previous Amud. And rather, according to Rabbi Meir, there is me'ilah by money of hektish, and once me'ilah is committed, it does go l'chulin, not like we said on the previous Amud, that there is no me'ilah by the money of hektish, and it does not go l'chulin. It really does go l'chulin, and it really should be a good kiddushin. And the Gemara continues, if that's the case, so then how do you explain our Mishnah? And Rashi explains, nisin katani b'shogeg lo kiddush. Again, our Mishnah says that if you're using the hektish b'shogeg for the purpose of kiddushin, it's not a good kiddushin. Alma lo nischal. You see that it's not nischal. You see that the money does not go l'chulin because it's not a good kiddushin. So how do we explain our Mishnah? And the answer is, bekosnos kahuna shelo bola. We're talking about the garments of the kahuna. That's what he used for the kiddushin, and these are garments that were not yet worn down. Hoel v'nitnu lehanos behen, since it's possible to derive benefit from them. Lefishalon nitna Torah lemalachei asharis, because the Torah is not given to angels, meaning to say it's impossible not to get any personal benefit. When a Kohen is wearing the garments of the kahuna, he has to be getting some personal benefit, and therefore, since it's impossible to refrain from getting personal benefit, so there's an exception in that situation. There's no me'ilah by these kosnos kahuna, and that's what he's using to try to do the kiddushin. He does that b'shogeg. That's not going to be a kiddushin. And Rashi explains, Bekosnos kahuna shalobola, we're talking specifically about the garments of the kahuna, that they're not worn down, meaning they're not worn down, uru'uyin la'avoda. The point is that they're fit to be used for avod in the Beis HaMikdash. V'cholzman sheru'uyin la'avod, as long as these garments are fit for the avod in the Beis HaMikdash, ein me'ilah b'shigagasan. If a person by mistake uses them for personal use, there is no me'ilah. Even though normally there is me'ilah b'shogeg, let's say by money of hektish, a person uses it by mistake, but by these kind of garments, there's no me'ilah. It's an exception to the rule. Because originally when you sanctify these garments, when they were sanctified, the understanding is that b'shogeg, of course, people are going to derive benefit. Just as long as you don't have intention to use them in that manner, but if by mistake you get some benefit, that's not considered me'ilah. Because the Torah was not given to angels, that the Kohanim have to immediately take them off like angels the moment they finish the avodah. That's impossible. They can't even leave it for a moment on them after the avodah. That's impossible. That's something only the Malachei Asharis can do. And so therefore, again, this is an exception to the rule of Me'ilah. So what the Gemara essentially is saying, what Rav essentially is saying is that in general, of course, when you have Mos Hektish, there is a concept of Me'ilah. Even in a situation, let's say, b'shogeg, you use the money for kiddushin, it's going to be a good kiddushin because you will have committed me'ilah, and the money will go l'chulin, therefore you can use that money for kiddushin. The kiddushin will be effective. He'll have violated the prohibition of me'ilah, but it will still be a good kiddushin. And when our Mishnah said that it's not a good kiddushin, it was talking about a very specific case, talking about the garments of the Kohen. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come and hear the following proof. Kosnos kahuna shebolu. It says if you have the garments of the kahuna and they are worn out, so mo'alin bohem, so then there is me'ilah. Divrei Rabbi Meir, those are the words of Rabbi Meir. And so the Gemara says, my lav afilu lo balu. Doesn't the Brisa mean to say not only if they're worn out, but even if they're not worn out, there's me'ila? And to that the Gemara says, no, that's not what it means. Lo no, balu dafka. When this Brisa is saying there's me'ila by the garments of the kahuna, it just means if they're worn out, they're no longer being used as garments during the avoda. But if they're used as garments during the avoda, there is no me'ila. And Rashi explains, balu dafka means only balu, dekevan de'in ru'uyin le'avoda, since they're not fit for avoda, harehen kashar hektish, now they're like any other hektish, v'lo nitnu lehanos behen, you're not allowed to use them, you can't derive benefit. So again, in that situation, if it's balu, they're not being used for the avoda, so then they're like any other hektish, there is me'ila, that's all the brisa means. But if you have a situation where it's low balu, where it's fit for the avoda, again, that's an exception, and there is no me'ila. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here the following proof. Mo'alim bechadatin, there is me'ila by the new shkolim. Ve'ein mo'alim batikim, but by the old shkolim, the shkolim from the previous year, there is no me'ila. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, Mo'alin af batikim, there's even me'ila when it comes to the older shkolim. Shahayir Rabbi Meir Omer, because Rabbi Meir would say, Mo'alin b'shiare halishka, there is me'ila when it comes to the shkolim that are left over in the chamber. And so the Gemara asks, Ve'amayna, why should there be me'ila by the shiore halishka? Nemo hoel v'nitnu lehanos lefishalo nitna torah l'malachi asharis. We should say the same logic that we say by the garments of the kahuna. We should say that it's something that you can derive benefit from because the Torah is not given to malachi asharis. To chomas so'iru migdaloseh, because the walls of the city and its towers, mishiore halishka asu, they were built using the funds from the leftover shkolim in the chamber, and it's impossible not to derive some benefit from the walls of the city. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, the walls of the city, its towers, all of the needs of the city, they come from that those leftover shkolim that are in the chamber. And so you see from Rabbi Meir that there is me'ila, even in a situation where it's impossible to stop oneself from deriving benefit. And the Gemara answers to this, Lo Tema Rabbi Meir, don't say that it's Rabbi Meir that says there's me'ila in this case, Ela Ema Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Again, Rabbi Yehuda, he does not say there's an exception by the garments of the kuna, and similarly, he does not say there's an exception by the shiore halishka. And Rashi explains, Mo'alin bechadatin, there is me'ila when it comes to the new shkolim. Shofaros hayu b'mikdash, there were shofaros in the Beis HaMikdash, containers in the shape of shofaros. Uvahem nosnim shkolim, and in those containers they would place the shkolim. Be'echad kasav olav tiklin chadatin, on one of the shofaros it was written, the new shkolim. Umishalo shakal shiklo ba'adr shemevio b'soch shenaso, nosna l'soch, if somebody didn't give the shekel in adr and he's bringing it within the year, he puts it into that shofar. V'agizbar nosna noso belishka k'shemagi echad mipirkei truma, and then the gizborim, the treasures of the Beis HaMikdash, they would put it in the chamber when the time came to take from those funds. Shabishlosha prakim tarmanosa. There were 3 times during the year where they took from those funds. Uvasheni, and then in the second shofar, kasav tiklin atikin, it said these are the older shkolim. Umishalo shakal eshtakit, somebody who didn't give a shekel last year, meviu l'shana haba, would give it in the next year. V'nosan l'soch shofar zeh, and that money would go into this shofar. Those were the older shkolim. V'hagizborim mefanan osan mos l'shiare lishka mishana shavra, and then the gizborim, the treasures, they would take that money and they would put it in the chamber with the leftover monies from the previous year. So those were the older shkolim. And so the halacha is mo'alin b'tiklin chadatin, when it comes to the new shkolim, if you use them for your personal use, that's me'ila. Sharei lekarbanos tzibur hein omdim, because those are supposed to be used for the public karbanos that are brought in the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, these are designated as hektish. You can't use it for personal use. Of course, it's me'ila. However, ve'ein mo'alin b'tiklin atikin. However, there's no me'ila when it comes to the older shkolim. Shetoras shirei lishka aleim, because those are like the leftover of the shkolim. V'nitanim lechomas o'ir migdaloseh. All those funds, they were used for the walls of the city and the towers. V'chol tzarchei tikun ir, and all the fixing of the city. Ketalak Haman, as we'll say later. V'chasavar Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda holds ein me'ila b'shiarei halishka. There is no me'ila by the shiarei halishka. Shenishar odef ala kupos lachar gimel trumos, meaning after they've used all the funds they needed, and they have this leftover remaining amount of money, so there is no me'ila. Hachi garsinan shaya Rabbi Meir omer mo'alin b'shiarei lishka. So Rashi says the proper girsa is that Rabbi Meir says there is me'ila me'ila by the shiari halishka. And so the Gemara then asked, "V'chomas o'iru migdaloseh." But what about the walls of the city and the towers? Aren't those also things that it's impossible not to derive benefit from? V'amay mo'elin ben. So according to Rabbi Meir, why is there me'ila? Nemolo nitnu shigagos osan mos leme'ila. We should say that if you mistakenly use that money, it's not me'ila. Me'achar she'omdin l'chomas ir, because if that money is designated for the wall of the city, for the walls of the city, shalonin the Torah l'malachi asharis, the Torah isn't given to angels. She was reason meleanos menachoma, that they're going to be careful not to get any benefit from a wall. Leisha betzila, not to sit in its shade. V'oleh, or on top of it. El al karcha chava b'shehutra hanoas hachoma linyan shar hanos mia b'kedusha sayu kaimi. Rather, we say it must be that even though there is some kind of benefit you're allowed to get from the walls, but still in terms of other benefit, it's still considered to have the same holiness, and apparently it is still me'ila. That's what Rabbi Meir says, and that's what Rabbi Meir should say as well when it comes to the garments of the kahuna. And the Gemara then answered, it's not a contradiction within Rabbi Meir, because Eimer Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Moelin Batikim. What we should say is, that doesn't mean to say that Rabbi Meir's opinion is there's Me'ila with the older Shkolim. It's actually Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Kidamrinu Masni Sanami, and that's consistent with Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, B'shogeg Kiddush, that it's a good Kiddushin if you use the garments B'shogeg. Dekasavar, because Rabbi Yehuda holds, Zafal Pishanitnu Kosnos Kahuna Lehanos, even though the garments of the Kohen, you're allowed to derive benefit when you're wearing it. Lehanos Lekohanim Lachar Avodah, that they can wear it a little after the avoda, but still Rabbi Yehuda holds linyan shar hanos b'kedusha sayu kaimi. In terms of any other benefit, it's still considered holy. Umal zeh b'kiddushin v'yatzel lechulin, and therefore, let's say you try to use it for kiddushin, that will be me'ila and it will go lechulin, and it will be an effective kiddushin. Avol meizid she'ein bo me'ila lo neschalel v'lo kiddush. Now, in a situation, however, according to Rabbi Yehuda, let's say you would use these garments b'meizid. So b'meizid is not the classic case of me'ila. Me'ila in the Torah is talking about b'shogeg. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you use it b'meizid, so there's not going to be me'ila, it's not going to be nischalel, and it will not be a good kiddushin. But again, Rabbi Yehuda will then be consistent. The Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to the shiari halishka, will be consistent with the Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah, and will say that b'shogeg there is going to be me'ila if it's used for other purposes. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, another proof to Tanya, because we learned in a brayso. So Amar Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Avnei Yerushalayim shenashru, if the stones of Yerushalayim fell, Moalim bohem, there is me'ila, divrei Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Similar question to before. Again, we should say that it's impossible not to derive some benefit from the stones, from the walls of Yerushalayim, and therefore, if Rabbi Meir said before there's no me'ila by the garments of the kahuna, there should be no me'ila by the stones of Yerushalayim. Why does he say there's me'ila? And again, the Gemara answers, Lo Tamer Rabbi Meir, don't say this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, Ela Ema Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, you should say it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and again, Rabbi Yehuda will be consistent that there is Me'ila. But the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yehuda, but if you're saying it's Rabbi Yehuda, Yerushalayim in Mikdasha, but is Yerushalayim really considered holy? V'atanan, but we learned in another Mishnah, Ki Imra, Ki Dirim, Ki Eitzim, Ki Ishim, Ki Eichel, Ki Mizbeach, Ki Yerushalayim. Let's say you use all of these kind of languages, you say this is Ki Imra, or this is Ki Dirim, or this is Ki Eitzim, this is Ki Ishim. All of those, you're essentially saying you're making a neder and you're making the item prohibited. And one of the things you can say is, I'm making it prohibited like Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol Omer Yerushalayim lo amar klum. Anyone who says Yerushalayim, it's not like saying anything. So apparently Rabbi Yehuda holds Yerushalayim doesn't have any Kedusha. Yet over here we seem to imply that Rabbi Yehuda holds that Yerushalayim does have Kedusha. V'chi teima mishum do lo amar ki Yerushalayim. Now maybe you'll say that it's really that you didn't say ki Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yehuda means to say, if you say Yerushalayim without the chaf, that's not saying anything. But if he says ki Yerushalayim, then he would be rendering the object prohibited. The Gemara says that's not true, Vatanya, but we learned in a brayso. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol Omer ki Yerushalayim lo amar klum. If you say ki Yerushalayim, it's like nothing. You're not making the item prohibited. At sheyider bedavar hakara b'Yerushalayim, you have to make the neder and say this is like something that's broad in Yerushalayim. This is like a carbon. Then already you're saying something. But if you say like Yerushalayim, it's nothing. And Rashi explains, Ki Imra, let's say a person says Ki Imra, what that means is, Harei olai kikar zeh, Ki Imra keseh hatamid. This kikar, this loaf is to me, Ki Imra, it's like a sheep, like the carbon tamid, you're making it like a carbon, meaning you're making it prohibited to yourself. Or Kedirim, what does that mean? Dir behemos, hektish v'dir ha'etzim, those are the areas where they store the animals of hektish or the wood. And so again, the question was, Yerushalayim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, doesn't seem to have any Kedusha. V'chiteim, and if you're going to say, Hadam Rabbi Yehuda lo amar klum mishum de lo amar ki Yerushalayim, el hareza ola Yerushalayim, maybe it's because you didn't have the chaf. That's not true. Rabbi Yehuda said even if you say ki Yerushalayim, it's nothing. So again, that seems to be contradicting what we're saying above, that Yerushalayim does have this Kedusha, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Dalid Amud Beis.